Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking a little football, baseball, basketball, hockey, but first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the Stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is going on right now, so get yourself some Valentine's Day plans. Head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jerseys, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, we were talking just a minute ago before we started recording about the NFL postseason and the conference or the conference championships. And I was saying how my wife is an Eagles fan and I despise the Eagles. They are 1A, 1B with the Green Bay Packers. And so now I have to sit there and live with my wife going full Philadelphia. She's yelling at the TV, E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. We get it. You can spell second grade words. Cool.
S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
The extra B is for B-Y-O-B-B. That extra B is a typo.
Come to Homer's BBBQ.
So it's frustrating. And, you know, as a meatball, I was totally rooting for the San Francisco 49ers to win it all. And why? Because the Bears beat them.
You know,
Plain
I
and
was kind of rooting for the 49ers too, but that's just because I like the 49ers and I like the way they play, though today was just disastrous for them. And this is something I wanted to mention on this show is the situation that they were in, the 49ers, where you have Brock Purdy as your starting quarterback, because obviously Trey Lance has been hurt all year. Jimmy G's been hurt. You know, he's not available. So Brock Purdy was your starting quarterback with, what was the backup's name? Johnson? I don't even know.
John Johnson,
whoever it was. So I made a tweet on Twitter. You might have seen it. And it is getting attention right now as it stands at 7 p.m. on Sunday and growing. It's got over 700 likes, 24 quote tweets, 80 retweets. I said, imagine having to rely on your final string quarterback with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. And I posted a picture of Caleb Haney from 2010. And I did it to myself, but that opened up a can of worms that just brought back what, in my opinion, was one of the darkest days in Chicago sports history. And that was that NFC Championship against the Packers. That was one of the most depressed days I ever felt. That was a dark day in franchise history, Chicago sports history. That was a really, really bad day. And then there's a whole other thing just going on when I watch the playoffs. And it kind of alludes to what you said is I love NFL playoffs. I love watching it. I eat it up. But this year, for whatever reason, because I knew this wasn't going to be a season which the Bears are going to be in the playoffs. I understand what they're doing. I'm glad we got the first overall pick. But man, we're watching the Chiefs right now. The Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship for what, 4 or 5 straight years now?
Yeah, something like that.
The Eagles are going to their second Super Bowl since 2017. And they had that period where things were great. Then they had a year or two where things were not. And now they're back going to the Super Bowl. And we have Joe Burrow playing in his second straight AFC championship and is the defending AFC champion. And on top of that, you had the San Francisco 49ers who win their third NFC championship in the last 4 or 5 years and have 5 Super Bowls. So what I'm trying to say here is I see these teams and I see the fans go crazy for these teams. These fans get to watch their team year in, year out play for the Super Bowl, while me, as a 28-year-old Bears fan, have seen 2 or 3 maybe teams that the Bears had a chance at a Super Bowl with in my entire life. Like 3 actual bites at the apple. And I'm talking 2006 when they made it there, 2010, that NFC Championship team I just referenced, and 2018 that didn't even win a playoff game. Those are the only times in nearly 30 years of my existence that I've got to see the Bears had a legitimate bite at the apple. Pat Mahomes, if he wins tonight, will make his 3rd Super Bowl in his career, and he's not even 30 yet. Meanwhile, the Bears have 3 playoff wins in my lifetime. I've kind of reached that boiling point. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of watching on the couch every year and not seeing the Bears be a part of this. In the past decade, we've had 1 playoff game we were actually invested to. The other one in 2020, everybody knew we weren't winning that game. They backed their butts into it. Nobody cared. I'm just tired of it. Just clear and frank, as a fan, I'm just tired of sitting on the couch and not having my team have a shot at this. I really am. And I'm just praying that we're on the right track. Everything is going to plan great so far. I just want to get there already. I've had enough.
Yeah, it sucks watching everybody else enjoy football when I want to enjoy football. It's bogus. It's, it's like the universe is like, screw you, Chicago sports. You can't have fun.
And the infuriating thing about all of this is, and I kind of think about this more and more every growing year, the Bears are like the grandfather of the NFL. How should the charter franchise of football go on bad runs like this for so long? Shouldn't like the grandfather of the NFL be one of the more successful teams? Wouldn't you think?
You would hope, but it's not.
It just sucks. And I don't want to sound like whining, but just after a while, it wanes on you. You would think that you'd grow numb to it after a while. That's kind of how I felt as a kid being a Cubs fan, because as a Cubs fan, you're just like, yeah, we're the Cubs. We know. But you're thinking of the Bears and you're like, this is one of the big sports franchises in North America. They were,
Not to interrupt you, but have you ever been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton?
When I was a little kid, I barely remember it. I was maybe 4 years old.
It is just chock full of Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you turn, Chicago Bears, Chicago Bears, Chicago Bears. You would think that in the Super Bowl era, we would have more success than we have.
And you know what's really, you would. You know what's really frustrating? Is if we would have had a good quarterback with all those defenses, we could be the 49ers.
Yeah. We've just had shit history of quarterbacks, period.
I mean, look at the tweet I just made. The last time we had a trip to the Super Bowl on the line, we had to rely on Caleb Haney.
And he almost did it.
And he almost did. He almost, to his credit, not taking that away from him, but he almost did it. But again, that's where we were. And it's honestly a miracle that we made a Super Bowl in this century with Rex Grossman beating a future Hall of Famer. I mean, that was truly amazing. But you know what's funny is I recently went back and watched the highlights of that NFC Championship. If we had a consistent quarterback in that game, we could have won that game like 50-16, man. I'm telling you.
Oh,
do you remember that game? How they all those great field positions and they settled for field goals like the entire first half?
I mean, that was that whole Bears offense is field goal, field goal, field goal. Devin Hester give you good field position. Oh, cool. We'll kick a field goal.
Yeah, or you'd let Thomas Jones run it in. It was, I mean, Rex Grossman made the one great throw to Bernard Berrien, but you look at the rest of that game and it was a lot of Thomas Jones, the defense, and Robbie Gould's leg.
Speaking of Thomas Jones, he liked a tweet that I made the other day.
Did he really?
Yes. Somebody was asking about ranking like these handful of Bears running backs. And I just put Matt Forte, ranks up there with the Bears greats. And I'm like I said, I'm not going to rank them, but Matt Forte was an all-time great, and Thomas Jones didn't get a fair shake in this city, but he was fantastic, and he liked the tweet.
That's cool. That's
That
cool.
Made me feel good. It's like Thomas Jones read something I wrote. I always loved him.
He was
I
a
always loved
very
him.
solid player. Very, very, very solid player. And obviously, Matt Forte will always be my favorite Bears running back in my lifetime. But Thomas Jones really was a very solid player and was a big reason we got to the Super Bowl in 2006. Always a big fan of him. Is he an actor now?
I don't know.
I think he's an actor.
Huh.
Gotta do something after football, right?
I mean, you can't just sit there.
No. So yeah, good for him on picking that career up. I think that when you look back at some of those players, because you obviously had Devin Hester, you obviously had Brian Urlacher, you obviously had Lance Briggs and Peanut Tillman. But you look back and you're like, man, remember Musi Muhammad? You remember Nathan Vasher? You remember Thomas Jones? You had some really, really solid players on those mid-2000s teams. If they could have just had a consistent quarterback, they absolutely would have won a Super Bowl. And we thought that Jay Cutler was going to be that guy. And, Jay Cutler, I think at the same time, he wasn't quite good enough to be the guy, but he was also capable of doing it and was too much of a scapegoat when things went wrong. He was far and away from being a perfect quarterback, but I still think if they could have gotten him an offensive line, things would have been better. And he didn't always make the best decisions. He wasn't always the best teammate. That's why he wasn't always the ideal guy, but he had the physical talent to be that guy. And some of it was on him. Some of it was on the team around him. But it's just, I remember when we got Jay Cutler and we thought all our problems were solved. Like this was the missing piece that we had in the 2000s. Cause Rex Grossman had his moments, but he was never consistent. When it was bad, it was bad. And, you liked Kyle Orton, but Kyle Orton was like a better game manager where he wasn't going to lose you a game. He was a solid enough quarterback, but he wasn't going to be that guy that was going to take you to a championship.
I'm going to pitch you a scenario here. I'm going to get into my DeLorean and do 88 miles an hour.
Dun, 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 dun.
And I'm going to take you back to April 23rd, 2005.
Okay.
We're sitting in New York at the Jacob Javits Convention Center. It's I don't know, let's say noon-ish on East Coast time, and San Francisco 49ers come up to the podium with the first pick in the NFL draft. San Francisco 49ers select Alex Smith, quarterback, Utah. With the second pick, the Miami Dolphins select Ronnie Brown, running back, Auburn University. With the third selection in the 2005 NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns select Braylon Edwards, wide receiver, Michigan. With the fourth pick, the Chicago Bears select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, University of California. Then you would have had Aaron Rodgers and Thomas Jones. I think that offense would have been all right.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it's a better selection than Cedric Benson.
Yeah, you are probably right.
I mean, I have to figure out some sort of like, coefficient to compare running backs to quarterbacks, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Aaron Rodgers is probably a better selection than Cedric Benson.
Yeah, it's hard for me to disagree with that one. I am not going to lie. Oh man. There are so many drafts you can look back at. and just be like, why? I'll never forget, man. I'll never forget when I actually was a believer of the whole baby Gronk thing with Adam Shaheen. I actually thought that was going to be a good pick. I'm not going to lie.
I think we all wanted to believe.
Yeah, call it delusion or whatever, but there was that pick, and I wasn't crazy about it, but I tried to defend the Kevin White pick, but no, not happening. I mean, there are obviously some that are hindsight 2020. I mean, we can analyze the Trubisky one to death, but here's the thing is all these years later, I think there are two factors with that one. One, glad we didn't take Deshaun Watson now for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And two, really there's three things. Two, Pat Mahomes would have been really dang good. Would he have been as good as he is with Andy Reid and all those weapons in Kansas City if he was here in Chicago? I don't think so. Not saying he'd be bad. I still think he would be Pro Bowl level quarterback, but as good as he is, he's made even better with the system and the weapons he has around him. The Bears don't have that. And number three, this is a topic of conversation too. There were people, not saying I'm defending Ryan Pace with a pick, but there were a lot of people that had Trubisky as the first quarterback taken in the draft board. Not all of them, but some of them. I think Deshaun Watson going first at the time would have made sense. I'm talking before we knew anything. I think that Deshaun Watson had kind of the biggest pedigree, but there were people that had Mitch Trubisky, plenty of them going over Pat Mahomes. So, and the fact that we have Justin Fields now kind of makes that whole thing just kind of, you shrug your shoulders and say whatever at this point.
But looking forward, we have the current situation of the NFL draft. As we're recording this, it's January 29th. We're at the end of January. The NFL draft isn't until April 27th.
Which sucks.
And it's going to be nonstop. Here's the bullshit we're going to see. Washed up domestic abusers like Warren Sapp are going to come out of the woodworks. I have it on good authority from jail that the Bears are going to trade Justin Fields. And you're going to have all kinds of those stories. You're going to have, the Bears, the insiders say the Bears are going to make this trade or that trade. And then you're going to Twitter is going to be nothing but, hey, what do you guys think of my realistic mock? And it's the Bears picking up 47 first rounders and 8 starting players for that first pick.
Oh, if only. If only. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I even said, I think I quoted that Warren Sapp tweet or whatever it was. And I said, these next few months are going to be like cheese grater to the face, painful.
Yeah, I mean, I love Bears fans and I get they're excited, but all of these mocks I'm seeing are just so unrealistic. Like every fan thinks that everything that their team has is worth gold and what everybody else has is just garbage. I saw Cardinals fans do the same thing. They're like, what are we going to get for DeAndre Hopkins? And it was like, we'll trade him to the Bears for the number 1 pick and their second rounder.
It's ridiculous.
Like, no,
he'll probably cost a 3rd rounder at this point.
You're not getting the number 1 overall pick for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm like, maybe what do the Cardinals draft 3rd? Like maybe you could package your number 3 DeAndre Hopkins and a pick for the number 1. But no, you're not getting DeAndre Hopkins or getting a 1st and a 2nd for him.
Right. That's ridiculous.
But Bears fans are like, we'll trade, we want this player, and their their first rounder this year, their second rounder this year, their first rounder next year, their second rounder next year to move like 3 spots. No. Like, look when we traded from number 3 to number 2 to get Mitchell Trubisky. And what did we give up? Like a 4th or a 3rd and a 6th or a 3rd and a 4th, something, or did we swap
Whatever
4th?
it was.
And that's all they got. They didn't get an extra first rounder. They got like mid-round picks, like 2 mid-round picks. And we were all shitting our pants going, oh, I can't believe the haul the Bears gave up to move up 1 spot. And then you're like, well, the Texans, they're going to be giving us their first and second next year to move up to 1. And then we'll trade with the Colts to go down to 4. And we'll get their first and 4th or first and second next year too. I'm like, I think you're going to be really sorely disappointed when you see what the Bears really get. I'm like, if they're going to get a big haul, they're going to drop down from 1 to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I was like, I don't know if they want to do that. They might want to stay in that first 5 pick range and take lesser compensation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, because you do want some of those elite guys that are within those top 5 that aren't quarterbacks, because you need pretty much everything. And you have an opportunity to take some elite pass rush within that parameter, and you don't have any pass rush. I think just adding that alone with the secondary you already have, that would be a huge leap forward in what you're trying to do if you're the Bears. So trading down outside the top 10, you might get an absolute haul, and it might work out fine, but you just have to keep in mind and evaluate what you're trying to do there, because there's some really good non-quarterback talent that's towards the top.
Absolutely. And you have to really balance, because you need a lot of picks. You need a lot of bites at the apple, and you need to have a high hit rate on those bites. And trading further back into the first is going to get you more bites at the apple. And it might not be bites this year. It might be bites next year and the year after. But you really have to weigh that versus, okay, what's our goal for next year? As an organization, really, what's our goal? And honestly, I think as we're recording this on January 29th, the front office, they know that the expectation for what they want to do next year is still a moving target, because you have no idea what free agency is going to look like. I think you have to gauge it once you're like, okay, these are the guys we brought in, these are the draft picks we have, and this is what, training camp is starting to look like. You have no idea before that. What if there's no good targets out there for all this money you have, and you just fill another year of stopgaps because you're like, who are we throwing this money at? Maybe you get 1 or 2 guys that are, okay, we'll plan to have these guys for a few years. And then you utilize these draft picks and you bring in a couple more starters. You're like, okay, well then, you know what? Maybe we're looking at like a 6 to 7 win team this year. As opposed to, oh man, look, these handful of big name guys actually went to free agency. We signed them, and that's a better outlook for us. So, right now we have no idea. You're going to have to go through free agency and then see what that trade market looks like for that number 1 pick, and then evaluate, all right, how far do we want to go back versus where we see the talent drop off go, and then see who you bring in. If you bring in Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, and I'm going to caveat that by saying I have not watched the film on them. I've only watched highlights, but let's say those guys are elite talents, and you're able to get one of those guys along with a few free agents, like Hargraves, the defensive tackle from the Eagles, and Will Anderson. And then you're like, okay. And then, maybe a mid-level veteran pass rusher on the other side. And then you're like, okay, suddenly our defensive line looks much better. And, you start from there. all these things are going to change how your outlook looks like for next year, depending on what the free agency market looks like and what that trade market looks like, and how you're able to, have the draft luck fall in your favor. Because you know what, just because you say sign this guy doesn't mean that guy wants to sign with your team.
Right.
And just because you say draft that guy, what if you're like, you know what? We have a second round grade in that guy, like a mid second round grade. So if he's available when we pick with our second round pick, we're going to take him. But then somebody early in the first round's like, nah, we want to take him. And you're like, well, he's not available. You would have been stupid to draft him first overall, but he's gone. The luck has to come too. You have to have the guy you want and him fall to where you're able to draft. There's a lot of just moving parts that you can't evaluate where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things we're going to be watching for over the next few months is, leading up to the draft, you're obviously going to see mock draft after mock draft after mock draft. And, the way that teams evaluate talent is a little bit different. So what you think the Bears might do might not line up well because other teams feel different. And the way other teams feel means everything, especially if you're trading back. That means you're going, it's the whole, it takes two to tango when it comes to these things. And that the Bears are going to do everything they can to trade back. So how they evaluate what they need, the Bears can only control so much. How badly would the Texans potentially want to, if they did, want to move up one spot to guarantee them the first pick so they could take whichever quarterback they want? Or what are the Colts going to do? Is that going to be a factor? Are they going to want to trade up? Are the Carolina Panthers going to want to trade up for a quarterback? I mean, all these things, what they're evaluating and what they're doing, what they prioritize, it's just everything, every little thing can be changed with just the way one team feels about, like, one team wanting one thing can completely change everything. It's like you got to be prepared for every scenario. What if the expectation is you have X number of teams willing to trade up, and then you realize, oh, well, maybe the Colts don't want to trade up. Maybe the Seahawks don't want to trade up. And then it's there that changes things. You know what I'm saying?
And here's the thing. And none of us have any idea how this is going to play out. Nobody that's walking on this earth has any idea how this is all going to play out. But you look and you're like, okay, what teams need quarterbacks? And then you look at their options. You've got Carr that's going to be available. Tom Brady is a free agent. Lamar Jackson is a free agent. Danny Dimes is a free agent. Geno Smith is a free agent. So those are veterans there. Aaron Rodgers is going to be on the trade block, according to Adam Schefter.
Yeah, we'll see.
And so those are 6 starting caliber veterans that are on the market. And then you have 2, possibly 3 top 10 quarterbacks in the draft. And sure, it's always nice to have number 1, but this isn't a draft that has a Joe Burrow.
No,
this isn't a draft that has
Trevor Lawrence.
This isn't a draft that has Andrew Luck.
Yeah,
that's not a draft that we have. And that's not a knock at these guys. And it's just those drafts, like, you knew who was number 1 from day one, as soon as they said that they were announcing. And, every mock has, Young and Stroud as the top 2, but are they elite enough to warrant somebody going, you know what, screw it, I'm going to trade up to get one of those guys?
Well, and that's the thing too, is because you had plenty of teams, pretty much any team that didn't have a solidified solution for the quarterback, who would have loved to have had a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow or Andrew Luck, where now there will be teams that want him, but it's not going to be a long-term, not long-term. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not going to be a long-term solution for a lot of teams out there because they don't see the value in it like they did with others. Now, Bryce Young could be a great quarterback. CJ Stroud could be a good quarterback. Will Levis could be a good they could all be good quarterbacks, and no one's truly a can't miss, but the ceiling that those guys have compared to like Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck, there would be a lot more suitors willing to invest long-term in those kind of guys, doing whatever it takes to get them.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of quarterback needy teams, but there's also a lot of options. This is a year where there's a ton of options. Normally you don't have that kind of options. I'm sure Lamar Jackson is going to get franchise tagged, or they'll find a number and he stays in Baltimore. But Tom Brady's on the move and he's 400 years old. Aaron Rodgers on the trading block, like you said, we'll see. But, he's another guy that who knows how long he's going to be playing for. You have Geno Smith. He's a guy that had a great season this year. Carr is a guy who up till this season has played fairly well. And then you've got these 3 draft picks, and it's, what path do people want to go on? The Jets have already said, we want to go with a veteran. We've got a team that can win, enough of playing with these young quarterbacks. We want to win.
So do you think that they would pony up a big package for Aaron Rodgers? New York Bretts Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I just don't know how you justify the supposed asking price for Aaron Rodgers is it has to be an AFC team and 2 first rounders. Why on earth would you trade 2 first round picks for a 40-plus-year-old quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't do it, but the Jets might be desperate. I don't know. I think that it's been made pretty clear that the Colts are going to be looking to the drafting the young quarterback path and not the Aaron Rodgers path, because that was a legit talked about scenario where they're like, well, could they go after an Aaron Rodgers? Could they go after a Tom Brady? I don't think that's going to happen there. I think it would be ridiculous to give up 2 first-round picks for a player that old. And listen, Aaron Rodgers, you look at the numbers for him in the regular season, still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but sit down and watch him play. He's not the same Aaron Rodgers he was a few years ago. He just is not. Even in the games against the Bears, you're like, wow, he didn't even do that much. Look at those deep balls that were incomplete that he used to complete all the time. And he's not getting any younger. Father Time's undefeated. Would he immediately go and make a team better under center?
I think he'd make a team better, especially the Jets, because they had abysmal quarterback play. But the thing is how long is he going to play for?
Exactly.
Know after this 1 year, assuming he even comes back, he hasn't even said he's coming back. I'm sure he will because of how much money he'll make this year. But, as soon as you play this 1 year, you're like, okay, let's say you traded a big haul for him. And after the first year, it's going to take more than a year to get acclimated to a new offense, a new city, blah, blah, blah. But after that first year, he's like, do I want to play anymore? Teams needs to add talent. And then you're dealing with him holding you hostage.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing, is that objectively, yes, if you just picked him up and placed him on a new team, he would make your team better, more likely than not. But you are risking giving up a big haul for a guy who's not quite the same that he was and comes with baggage at this point on many levels. That's the thing. Like I was, I wasn't trying to say that he's bad now. Again, he's still one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's not as big of a difference maker as he once was, and he's only getting older. And despite the fact that he will make any team better, or at least most teams, if you put him on there, outside of like the Chiefs and, the Bengals and the ones that have Burrow, Mahomes, and Josh Allen, like the Bills. But, if you put him on the Jets, he makes them better, but that's not really a long-term solution with his age.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think any team is silly Like, even if you're like, oh, I need to add a veteran quarterback, I would much rather go after Tom Brady because it doesn't cost you draft picks. You just go to him and say, hey, listen, you get 2 bites at the apple to go against Bill Belichick every season. You don't cost us anything but money. And you know what? If you hang him up, you hang him up. It's we don't have to pay that money. We're only paying you for the time you're there. But if you give up a draft pick, you're going to expect years out of him. And who knows Aaron Rodgers is going to do? Who knows? So that's why if I'm the Jets, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, sure, if you can get him for a 2nd round pick, okay, worth it. But I don't know if that's going to happen. And if I'm the Jets, would much rather go after Derek Carr. Even, not nearly as good, but he is much better than what you had, and he's going to cost you a lot less. I'd rather go after Tom Brady. I would rather go after Lamar Jackson if he makes the market. And I would probably go after Geno Smith.
If I still don't think Lamar Jackson's franchise tag or not, I still just don't think he's going anywhere. I'm completely wrong.
I don't either, but you know what? If he's a tough one, because when he's healthy and he's playing, he's incredible.
Yeah.
But he's
one of top 5 in the NFL. If he is
hurt a lot. And part of what you pay for is availability.
Right.
And so if you're the Ravens, you're like, man, this guy wants $50 million, all guaranteed. But we don't know how much he's going to be healthy. And if he only plays, let's say he misses 6 games a season, that puts the onus on us to be great during the 11 games he's available in order to make up for, at best you go 3-3 in those games that he's gone. So you really have to go while he's there, like 10-1. There's not a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah. And I mean, when you look at the situation too, is Baltimore has kind of been in that weird spot with all these injuries to Lamar Jackson, because if you don't bring him back, then where do you go from there? Because you don't have the draft pick position to take one of the younger quarterbacks. And, you could bring in a short-term solution, but a lot of these free agents, at least like a Tom Brady, like that's a completely different quarterback for the system they've been running. That would be a much more difficult adjustment, bringing in a 45-year-old quarterback who's completely the opposite of what Lamar Jackson is. Tom Brady doesn't move. He's not mobile. And we see how athletic that Lamar Jackson is. And that's part of how they build their system. That's how they win games, is with the attributes that he has. And bring in someone like Tom Brady, it would be just completely different. So you don't have a high enough draft pick unless you somehow trade up, and you don't really have a lot out there that can be a similar type of guy, unless I don't know. I feel like they're probably just going to have to pony up and give Lamar Jackson, because you can give him time, and maybe other teams don't want to meet his demands either. So then he's like, all right, well, Baltimore's offering me this and nobody else is. I'm sure other teams would love to have him, but I think other teams are thinking the same thing. How much do we want to pay a guy if there's injury issues?
Here's your options with Lamar Jackson. One, you franchise tag him and then let it play out another year and see how, if he plays the whole season. If he gets injured again, you're like, okay, you can transition tag him, where essentially you don't have anything other than right to match. So the market dictates what kind of contract he's going to get, and then you decide if you want to match it or not. And then the market dictates. And that way you don't have to worry about negotiations with him. The market is taking care of it. And all you have to do is match it. You could just walk away from him and just tank and be like, you know what? We're going to tank, and then we're going to go after a new quarterback and try to rebuild. Or you could sign a veteran.
I just, you could tank. I just don't know if they'd really want to do that. And you mentioned the franchise tag thing. Absolutely, it's possible. Sometimes I think there's more to it than there is. Sometimes I think people make a big deal out of this whole philosophy, but I don't know. Would they worry about having a lame duck situation, so to speak?
I mean, why would you? Because if he goes in there and just, it's like, you know what, I'm not going to risk myself to get, when I don't have security. But then other teams are going to be like, oh man, this guy's not playing well. Is he, lingering effects of injury? And it's going to cost him. He's going to want to still go out and
oh, of course.
And the franchise tag number is a hell of a lot less money than what he's asking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's asking for 50 and the franchise tag is expected to be about 32. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
That's so, you could franchise tag him for 2 straight years and push off your decision on what to do with him.
And that's why, because that option's there, that's kind of why I alluded to the fact that I don't see him going anywhere. I feel like if you were to ask Baltimore right now, they would absolutely love to get that contract extension done with something that's reasonable, because, franchise tagging, the money difference is very big. But again, you're delaying the inevitable. You're delaying what you need to do. And, it's a little scary, but at the same time, if you franchise tagged him and he got really banged up, maybe it makes your decision not to pay him long-term easier. There are so many different ways you could look at it. I just think it's a weird position, because even if you do franchise tag him and you're not going to be able to commit long-term necessarily, then you got to decide where you got to go from there. Obviously, that step comes after trying to win a Super Bowl with him under the tag, but you're not going to be setting yourself up to be in a good position to take a quarterback, or really you're going to have to make some really big decisions going forward. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, it's what's nice about signing a player to a long-term contract is you have the flexibility to shift that money however is best for your salary cap situation.
Yeah, it's easier to plan ahead.
Yeah. So you know what? We've, like, for the Bears, if the Bears were to sign somebody to a long-term contract and they're like, you know what, we've got a ton of money. There's not a lot of players available for us this year, but we have to spend a certain amount to hit the cap floor. Okay, let's front load this and pay off the whole, guaranteed amount this year. And that way it frees us up money going down the road when we have new free agents we have to sign or extend other guys. Like, it gives you the flexibility. Or if you're like, hey, we're tight against this, you can keep kicking that can down the road, and because the cap is going to go up. So it's a lot of flexibility that it gives you. And plus, the longer that it goes, at the end of the contract, the money sounds not so bad.
Exactly. The cap is going to change. The market's going to change. And we saw players in baseball sign big contracts 4 or 5 years ago thinking, holy crap, now those contracts look like steals.
Yeah. You're like, if you guys signed a contract 5 years ago as a quarterback, signed a 5-year deal, by the end of it, you're like, holy cow, he is so underpaid compared to the other quarterbacks. And that's what they're saying with the Patrick Mahomes. You're like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is making $47 million a year. But guess what? Is in 2 years, he's probably going to be the 3rd or 4th highest paid quarterback. And by the time his contract is done, you're like, oh man, $47 million. That's a steal for a quarterback.
Think about what Trevor Lawrence can make one day.
Think about
what
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow is going to make one day.
Yeah, Joe Burrow is going to be coming up soon.
He's going to be like that Donald Duck cartoon where he's diving into like the pit of money and gold.
I'm curious. I am so incredibly curious of what Danny Dimes is going to get.
Yeah, because
he's been terrible his whole career, and then this year he plays pretty okay, like not great, but not bad. He's been, I would say, above average, and
right.
And you're like, all right, how well do we reward above average? And him, the franchise tag is way more than he should be paid. So you're like, man, we want to get a deal done because we're going to be paying less than the franchise tag. So I don't know, man. And
that might be more of a stickier situation. And it's just because you can extend him, and obviously you're not going to be paying him what you think Lamar Jackson's eventually going to get, or some of these other guys, but can you maintain the way you played this year rather, with Danny Dimes?
And can you win with him?
See, that's the thing. He beasted in a playoff game against the Vikings, but his guys were also 10, 15 yards open. I mean, they were playing a scrimmage against the Vikings that game. They were schemed and coached perfectly. So obviously an advantage you have of continuing to roll with a guy like him is the fact that he knows the system. Brian Daboll's system is clearly effective, but are you going to be able to beat the big guys? Look at what the Eagles just did to you. And obviously you need to get more talent around him, whether it's offensive and defensive. It's not just on him, but can you make a Super Bowl run with Daniel Jones? I'm not as sure. I mean, I feel like you would have to be even more like the San Francisco 49ers to even have that kind of a chance.
And especially if you lose Saquon Barkley.
Which I don't think they will, but if they did lose Saquon Barkley, yeah.
I've heard that they're bracing to lose one of the two.
And I would love it if they lost Saquon Barkley to the Bears.
The rumors are that they're trying to key in on Danny Dimes and they're planning on only being able to keep one, but they're prioritizing Danny Dimes. And so,
well, what if you kept Saquon Barkley and you went after the veterans that are out there?
I mean, Derek Carr with good offensive, minds around him, like when he was with Chucky, you're like, Chucky. All right, Chucky. You're with John Gruden. He played really well. So with Brian Daboll, could he replicate that? Because right. I think the current head coach with the Raiders is terrible, and I think he's part of the blame for the regression of Derek Carr. So could Brian Daboll, who is a guy that's been maximizing players, do something with Derek Carr? And so it's a big risk. Is the grass greener?
Yeah, and I wonder, I'm just throwing this out there. I mean, what I could see the Seahawks doing is bringing back Geno Smith and then drafting somebody and being like, hey, we're going to draft our long-term solution, but we're going to come in and bring in Geno Smith one more time so he can be that veteran quarterback next year, and this next quarterback can sit with Geno Smith. You could see that happening, right?
Yeah.
I could also see them saying, you know what, we're just going to try to roll Geno Smith another year. But let's say the Seahawks do draft a replacement quarterback and they don't bring Geno Smith back. What would you say if the Giants didn't bring back Danny Dimes if they were to try out Geno Smith?
I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what. Geno Smith is a guy that you're like, oh, he had a great year, but his career has not been great. Is it because he got a really good opportunity? Is it because of the coaching staff in place? There's so many risks with everybody.
Ton of risks.
What if Derek Carr really is just regressed and he's not a good quarterback anymore?
Yeah, I'd be a little worried about Derek Carr, to be honest with you.
What if Geno Smith regresses back to what he's been his whole entire career? What if Tom Brady gets hit by Father Time? What if Aaron Rodgers just decides to hang him up? Like, whoever it is you get as a veteran, I just don't know.
I mean, I'm looking at the veterans right now that are available via free agency. Obviously, the one that's probably the best option, and even this comes with risks because of the injuries and the money he's going to command, is Lamar Jackson. Obviously, if they don't end up franchise tagging him, but Tom Brady's obviously the far and away the most accomplished of any other quarterback ever, and especially the ones in this free agent class. But he is 45 now, right?
Yes.
44, 45. And the Bucs weren't that good this year. And yeah, sure, Tom Brady put up some good passing yard numbers and whatnot, but watching that playoff game against Dallas, I don't know. I think Tom Brady is finally meeting his match with Father Time.
I think he needs a good team around him, but imagine you put him on. I mean, that Bucs team is aging. They don't have a ton of talent. They can't run the ball. That has nothing to do with Tom Brady.
It's not all on him. I'm not trying to blame it all on him, but do you remember that pick he threw in the end zone early on in that game?
Yes, but the guy threw 55 passes that game. Here's the scenario: what if he goes to the Jets, where they've got a pretty darn good defense, they've got a good offensive line, you've got some weapons there on offense, and you've got a hell of a running game. They add another receiver in the draft, and suddenly Tom Brady has, they're really a quarterback away, and he's got a hell of a running game with what's Breece Hall. You've got a hell of a running game there. You don't need to throw 55 times a game, and you've got a hell of a defense behind you. It's a better situation than some of the other ones, or what if you're Tom Brady and you say, I'm going to finally go to Miami?
I mean, I still think Tua's the guy there.
Tua's on a rookie contract. You could pay him, and you put Tom Brady there. You've got elite weapons at wide receiver, and they just hired Vic Fangio on defense. So they're going to have a good defense.
I don't see it. I just don't see it.
I mean, they gave up a first round pick for tampering with him. Why wouldn't they consider bringing him in? Tua, who knows what is happening to his brain?
I know. But
hey Tua, you're our guy long term. But you know what? You had a rough year. Let's give you a full year to heal, and you back up Tom Brady.
I like the idea of him on the Jets better, because I think what you said about the Jets was all true. And you're right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they didn't fail because of Tom Brady only. I mean, like you said, it's an old team that couldn't keep up anymore. They just weren't very good. So it would be a better fit for him, I think, on the Jets than as opposed to the Raiders for Tom Brady. I think the Jets, he'd have the protection and some of the weapons and the defense around him. And then obviously if he did go to Miami, he'd have 3 elite wide receivers. So that would give him something too. I don't know. It's going to be interesting with Tom Brady. At least the luxury of Tom Brady is you're not committing long-term with him. You're committing 1 or 2 years.
It's probably going to be a 2-year setup as two joined 1-year contracts. That's my thinking.
He just better have an offensive line in front of him. That's all I'm going to say.
But there's two more Bears topics I want to cover quickly. One is, we sort of covered a little bit, but who knows what the actual value of that number 1 overall pick is. And I don't think the Bears have any sense of what it'll be. And honestly, have you ever bought anything on eBay before?
It's been a while.
But here it's the eBay mentality where, there's something you want, but you're like, this is the price I want to pay. And if it was just like a strict price, this costs this, and it's just sitting on a shelf, you're like, that's a little more than I wanted to pay. I'm going to walk away. Same thing with like buying the hot item at Christmas. Same thing with eBay. It's like, all right, this item, there's 5 minutes left and somebody's bidding against me. They just outbid me. I got outbid. And then you bid again, and you end up bidding higher than you want because somebody else is bidding against you. And you get stuck in that mentality because you're like, now I have to have it. Same thing with something sitting on the shelf when the store is slow and they have a high price tag on it, and you only want to pay $50 for it, but they have $100 on it. And you're like, there's like 6 of them there, 10 of them. I'll just come back later and see if there's a sale. Versus, you know what? Somebody I know desperately wants this for Christmas, and they're sold out everywhere. And you finally drive an hour away and you see it on the shelf. You don't care that it's $100. Like, I'm going to pay $100. That's the mentality you have to create in order to bring the best of value for that number 1 pick. It only takes one desperate team to pay you, or 2 desperate teams to bid against each other. And I like that the team with the number 2 pick and the team with the number 4 pick are in the same division.
Yeah.
Because they're both going to have to offer you similar packages, and they're both going to be like, oh shit, I don't want to let this team have the guy I want, because they're both going after the same guys. And what always happens is, if there's 2 quarterbacks at the top, you're going to fall in love with one of them. And the other guy, you may think he's going to be really good, but you fall in love with the one.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how awesome the other one is. You're going to feel like you lost out. And Ryan Pace was the king of falling in love with a player.
I must get my man. I must overpay.
And he bid against himself. And that's all you need, is one doofus like that. And so, those two are great, because especially if you're able to eke out, the best deal from the Texans, because you move back 1 spot and you literally, every single player you would want is still going to be there, because the Texans are trading up for a quarterback. So you're like, okay, then that leaves us with every non-quarterback player in the draft. And then you can still make that a deal with the Texans, because then the Texans at that point are probably going to get desperate and be like, number 1, if they lost the guy they wanted, they're not going to want to lose another guy. And what if the Colts fell in love with the other guy? Like, they fell in love with CJ Stroud and the Colts fell in love with Bryce Young. Texans go up, take CJ Stroud. Then at number 2, Bryce Young is there. And then the Colts are going, oh man, what if somebody trades up with the Bears and takes him? What if somebody trades up with the Cardinals and jumps ahead of us to get him? They're going to want to move up. And then you trade back, get 4. It's your best case scenario. I don't know how realistic it is to pull off 2 trades like that, but as the Bears, that's your best bet to maximize your value, is pit those 2 against each other. You stay in the top 5, and you probably get the guy you wanted anyway. And then you wind up, and your best case scenario is that happens and somebody trades up with the Cardinals to get Will Levis. and you're sitting there at number 4 with every single non-quarterback player left on the board, and you still have the pick of the litter of who you would have drafted in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like I said, is it could go any number of ways because there's veterans available via trade. There's veterans available through free agency, and there's the draft. And maybe a lot of teams just don't go the trade up route because they go with a veteran. What if teams just, what if teams are like, what, these veterans are old or suck. I really want to draft somebody. Who knows where it's going to lie. And it's not going to happen until we're a week or less from the draft.
Right.
So we're like 3 months away from any sort of action, and we've just got to sit there.
Yeah. Speculation after speculation after speculation.
Yep. It's going to be a tough quarter of a year.
Man, you put it that way and it sounds 10 times worse.
It really does. I made it sound terrible.
Thanks.
And the one more thing I want to talk about is there are four teams that are eligible for Hard Knocks this coming season. The Commanders, the Jets, the Saints, and the Bears.
Bring it to Chicago.
Number one, do you want Hard Knocks here?
Yeah.
The only thing I want, here are the reasons I would want it. One, transparency. You get to see everything that the Bears have historically just hid from you.
Yep.
And number 2 is the league falls in love with the team that they've got to watch.
Yep.
Other fans hate the Bears and love to shit talk the Bears, and they fell in love with the Lions because up until this year, everyone just shit all over the Lions. Suddenly they're like, the Lions can do it, and everybody is like rooting for the Lions or believes in the Lions. And you're like, I would like for the Bears to be that position.
Exactly. You are echoing my thoughts.
On the other hand, is I don't want the added pressure that brings, and I want to be in an anonymity a little bit. So I'm on the fence, and honestly, I think the Saints. There's no story there. Why would you pick the Saints?
Boring.
Yeah, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a top draft pick. There's, they don't have an exciting coach. Like, what? Why would they? So I'm crossing the Saints off. I'm going to cross the Commanders off because of all of the controversy around ownership.
I was going to say, do they really want to open that can of worms?
Yeah, I think if you're the NFL, you don't want to spotlight that team. With all of the issues where they're trying to force the ownership. That's not the storyline you want to spin.
Yeah.
Riverboat Ron is the only selling point for that team, and I don't think that's compelling enough.
Agreed.
The Jets are interesting, and if the Jets trade for a quarterback, like let's say the Jets trade for Aaron Rodgers, that makes them really compelling.
Yeah, I could see it going to the Jets. I really could.
If the Jets don't figure out the quarterback, I don't know if the Jets are as compelling.
Yeah, but they still have like Sauce Gardner and a lot of guys on that team that are talented as hell.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's that New York bias too.
There is the New York bias. But I think it comes down to, if the Jets get a quarterback that people know, I think it goes to the Jets. If not, the storyline of Justin Fields, new GM, new team president, new head coach, number 1 pick in the draft, I think that is all compelling. And if you're the NFL, you're like, we can sell this. And Justin Fields is the center piece of this whole thing. There's a lot of good players in the Jets, and I am not discounting them. They're a far better team than the Bears. But can you imagine if they would have drafted Justin Fields instead of Zach Wilson?
Oh my goodness.
But they just, as a story people will watch on television, not play the game, but watch the story. Are they as interesting? I don't think so, but again, I might be biased.
Yeah.
I think it is the Bears right now, as we're recording this, January 29th. I think the Bears are probably the favorites to get it. And I think that changes if the Jets get a veteran quarterback.
Yeah, I think it is between the Bears and the Jets, because you pretty much echoed my thoughts. The Saints aren't interesting. The Commanders have the Dan Snyder drama. I feel like I'd be shocked if one of those two got it.
If the Jets got Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, I think that would be a lock that they would get Hard Knocks.
It would drastically increase their chances. Absolutely.
But I think right now, it is the Bears to lose or the Jets to win. I'm going to put it in a football terms. It's a 2-minute drive. You're down by 4. The Jets have the ball. It's their game to win. And can they do it? So I think a veteran quarterback gets them the Hard Knocks. They might still get it regardless, but I think that guarantees it. If they get a veteran quarterback that people know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Where do you want to go from here?
Okay, there are some thoughts I had about the Bulls that I just wanted to put out there. So you want to go there next?
Sure.
So I said this the other day, and this was after they lost those horrific back-to-back games. That Indiana Pacers loss was just unbelievable. And then you lost to the Hornets at home?
The Hornets by 15 points?
Yeah. I was saying this on Twitter. This is just my honest feelings. I don't like feeling this way. This is just how it feels. But I really don't have much of an emotional attachment to this team at this point. I'm kind of just burned out by it. And maybe it's because that we've seen regime after regime since the Jordan era end pretty much like this, where once again, you have the Bulls trying to spoon feed you something that we think could be something, but just ends up being what Jerry Reinsdorf teams love being, and that's mired in mediocrity. I mean, no one loves mediocrity more than a Jerry Reinsdorf sports franchise. So fitting that we're in this spot again. It's obvious this team's not going to win anything of substance, right?
Here's the weird thing. I agree with you, but right now, against the top 4 teams in the East, the Bulls have a 7-3 record.
Right, but that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
But they're winless against Orlando, Houston, San Antonio, and Charlotte, who are a combined 58 and 137. That's the frustrating part. Is sure that 7-3 against the top 4 teams in the East looks good, but that's regular season.
That's the thing.
Once the postseason starts,
that's not happening.
That's not
exactly.
Happening.
You're not going to beat the Bucks like that.
You are going to maybe eke out one win, and then you're just going to get trounced the rest of them.
Exactly. That's why it doesn't matter at this point. If you had a winning record, it would matter, but they don't. And so you get into a play-in tournament. Whoop-de-doo. Is that again? You're stuck in the middle. You're stuck right in the middle, and you can't really do much. And you're hearing more and more rumors about the possibility of some guys being moved. And this is what's getting to my whole point.
Well,
Is that,
really quickly is
yeah,
we've shifted. A week ago, we were hearing the Bulls are going to stand pat and do nothing.
Right.
And a week later, we're hearing multiple names being shopped around.
Yeah, and frankly, I think it's going to be like an Andre Drummond gets shipped off or something like that. Like they'll make a move or two. I just don't think it's going to be anything major.
Right. I agree.
Well, we'll never know. You never know. Maybe they surprise us and Vooch gets shipped off somewhere or something like that.
If so, they've put the public price on Alex Caruso, which is 2 first-rounders.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're getting 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso.
No,
I love
don't
him,
think so
and
either.
I think he would be such a help to pretty much any of the contending teams.
Absolutely.
I don't know if they're going to give up 2 first-rounders, but then of course you may say, you know what? If we expect to compete for an NBA Finals, that first rounder is really like a late or early second rounder, and we trade 2 second-round picks.
Yeah, that's
Like,
the other thing
maybe.
too. Is it worth giving up for if you're a team saying, you know what, we plan to be in contention for the next few years. We're giving up late first round picks. Is that one, a big deal to give up? And 2, is it a really big acquisition for the Bulls? Like, what does that do for them?
Right. And I'm hearing Kobe White for Jay Crowder bandied about. Andre Drummond's name is thrown out there, and I'm hearing Zach LaVine's name being thrown out there.
And see, Sean,
I mean, who knows? We're a week and a half away from the deadline.
Yeah.
A lot of stories are going to get floated around, some by teams, some by, the based in reality, some based on lies that are reported out. I don't know what to believe, but honestly, I don't see a path forward for the team the way it is without a healthy Lonzo Ball. And Lord knows when we're going to see that, because we are almost in February, and the report that came out is that he is nowhere near ready to play basketball.
He's not a factor. I'm not even thinking about Lonzo Ball right now. And this is my ultimate point here. I'm not emotionally married to anybody on this team right now. I'm not saying that I hate everybody on this team, blah, blah, not like that. But if you traded away any of these guys, would I be overly upset? No.
I mean,
no.
The closest one would be DeMar, but I know that he's on the back 9 of his career. Not a knock at all. It's just, we all know you have a shelf life, and
exactly,
he can't play forever. So if he would be the closest, and if he was on the front 9 of his career, yeah, I'd be pissed, because I really like DeMar DeRozan. I think he's a nice guy. He's a great player. But because of his age, I am more willing to accept it. Everybody else is just like, you know what? They're gone. The way that this team is constructed is just not, you can't win with it.
No. And that's the thing is, like, Vooch has played better this year. Last year, he really frustrated me. This year, he's been better, but he's well over 30. He's a veteran. He's on the last of his deal. What good is it keeping him around if you're not going to go anywhere? And, listen, Io's my guy. I love Io. But I am at the point where I'm not saying I want the Bulls to trade Io. Like, I'm not actively hoping that they find a trade partner for him. But if they did trade him, would I be punching holes in walls? No. Honestly, no. I wouldn't be doing it for any of these players. And again, it's not personal. One, I'm burned out from it. And 2, where are we going with this? We're not really going anywhere. I mean, what this season has felt like is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That's what this season has felt like. And you can't really maneuver this into having them be a championship caliber team. With this, the way it's constructed right now, best case scenario was last year, where you're a playoff team, you're top 5, and then you don't go anywhere in the playoffs.
And you don't have a first round pick unless you're in the top 4.
Right. And right now, we're not bad enough to have that be an option, really.
No. I mean,
and you're not good enough to compete. You're in hell again.
It's the thing is if you make a trade that if you trade DeMar, you have a realistic shot of getting a top 4 pick. Because you'll probably you can easily fall. Let's see. You are tied for 9th right now. You could easily fall in that top 5 worst teams pick easily. And then that would put you at 42% of getting a top 4 pick. Like those odds.
Right.
Much better odds.
Yeah, we just feel stuck. And honestly, it feels like right now, every other team in this city is on a better path than you, if you're looking at the Bulls. Right?
Right.
Even the Blackhawks, who are years away from being anything good, at least they have a plan. At least there's a vision.
It's not a very clear vision for us yet.
But it's clear enough where you understand what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. They're still in the deconstruction phase. They haven't even poured the foundation yet. They're still tearing pieces down. But
exactly,
you can suddenly see, okay, here's where
here's where we're at. Here's why we're doing it.
Yes, they've chosen a lane and they're going down it, and they're at the last stages of demolition of the team before they start doing a rebuild.
Exactly.
And I just did a tankathon simulation, and Orlando gets the number 1 overall pick, and the Bulls got the number 5 pick, which then goes to Orlando. So Orlando gets 1 and 5. God, that would piss me off if the Bulls got the number 5 pick.
And in return for Vooch, we got 1 playoff win. Not 1 series win, literally 1 playoff win.
But then you're like, man, if they could have just got 1 better pick, they keep that pick. Then a top 4 pick.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're like, okay, we keep our first round pick and we were able to get a player that's hopefully going to impact us.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. And I think standing pat is a bad choice. Because you don't have cap flexibility, and you don't have building blocks. And we keep talking about is without Lonzo Ball, this is a super flawed team, because this team with Lonzo Ball, you needed to have the synergy. It's kind of like the Morphin Power Rangers. You need all 5 of them to be a unit. Or for old people out there, Voltron. You don't have that. You have a key cog missing. You're an incomplete team. You don't have the cap to room to go get it. And Patrick Williams is not progressing to the point where you're like, oh, hey, that's our star. That's our future star. And we're going to start building around him. He's just not there.
Well, and here's a thing, too, to think about is, let's say if the Bulls made some trades for these veterans, at the very least for the rest of the year, you'd be able to give minutes to guys like Williams and Terry and truly see what you have in them.
And I'm looking, is the Bulls according to Spot Track, for next season are literally in the middle of the pack as far as cap space goes.
Yeah.
Their projected practical cap space. Houston's number one with 72 million. And the Bulls are at like 12.
What good is it going to do you, though?
Nothing. You can't
Honestly,
do anything with that.
what good is it going to do you? No, not much.
So like what you can't fix your team with $12 million.
No.
And I know the NBA cap is a really complicated thing, and it's not a hard cap, but you don't have any picks, you don't have any money. Like what's the plan? And staying the course is not a plan. Like staying the course, if you're like, let's say that, DeMar and Levine were injured, and you're like, everybody's injured. We'll roll out the team next year when everybody's healthy. It's everybody's healthy, but Lonzo Ball, and you're nowhere near competing for a championship.
Right. And I mean, here's the thing. Lonzo Ball is a very good player. I'm a huge fan of Lonzo Ball. He makes a difference when he's playing out there versus when he's not. But if the difference between you being legit and not is Lonzo Ball, a very good player, but not like a Steph Curry or LeBron James or a James Harden or a Giannis, then you're a pretty damn flawed team. And we know that they are a flawed team. And we said all offseason that they didn't do enough to fix their flaws. Their flaws are very obvious. 3-point shooting, size. Teams can drive in the paint all they want. And they know that they have to settle for shots, jump shots, 3-point shooting. What did Milwaukee do last year? They clogged the lanes and made the Bulls shoot. And that was one of their weaknesses.
And Lonzo he's a good 3-point shooter, and he's a hell of a defender.
Mm-hmm.
And teams, they can't do fast breaks because he's a good perimeter defender, and he clogs the passing lanes like Alex Caruso. You have the two of them together. It's really hard to feed the ball into the post. It's really hard to run the fast break. You slow things down, and you force teams to really work to get shots. And then he's a good 3-point shooter. And those are big keys, because they masked the Bulls' inability. Caruso and Ball really masked the Bulls' inability to play interior defense and at the post, because teams had a hard time feeding the ball in on a consistent basis. Once those two players were hurt, it was like free for all. Just pass down low and watch Vooch get owned.
Right. Yeah, it's frustrating, and it's at the point where I'm just burned out by it.
And you added an interior guy that can rebound, because that was another problem too. You couldn't rebound. But how many minutes does he play to Drummond? How many minutes does he play? Like, how impactful is his rebounding if he doesn't play much? Like, I think when you finally move on from Vooch, you have to put a center in that can rebound and play defense. I don't think you worry as much about the scoring aspects.
Right.
Ugh. It's just tough.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, if I'm ranking my hopefulness of any of the Chicago sports teams, the Bulls have to be the lowest.
Yeah.
The Bears have already hit the rock bottom and are on their way up. The Blackhawks are right. We're a couple of weeks away from rock bottom. I mean, we are like between March and June is rock bottom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when the draft lottery happens, if we get that number one pick, they suddenly shoot from rock bottom to hopeful status.
Exactly.
So, and the Cubs are on the rise, and the White Sox, they're still in a championship window. So obviously the Bulls are the far and away most disappointing team in the city.
Absolutely. I mean, you could also argue that for the White Sox too, because they are in a legit championship window and what they're coming off of. But I think right now in winter, far and away the Bulls.
Yeah, the White Sox, they could hit that spot, or compete with it depending on what they do this year. But I know we're all down on the lack of moves, but a healthy team, they realistically have, can win this division. The Bulls have no chance of that, and
right,
they
yes,
don't.
Right.
But the White Sox could easily go right to that spot because, if injuries, bugs hit, if Lance Lynn and Giolito aren't able to replicate their success, like you could see where the wheels could come off of this.
Sure.
And this team is not willing to spend the money to get themselves out of that hole.
And the depth is lacking in a lot of areas.
Right. So the wheels could really come off. But right now it's the Bulls because they are just middling.
Right. No, that's fair. That's completely, utterly fair.
Like the Bulls are the definition of mid as fuck.
Right. Yeah, they really, really are.
All right. Where should we go to now?
Well, we were just talking about baseball, so.
So, do you want to talk Cubs or Sox?
We could start with Sox, I guess.
Fucking Mike Clevenger.
Yeah, that's not great. And
did you read the claims?
I did.
I want to just for people that didn't read it, they're just like, well, two sides of the story. We got to see how this plays out. He choked the mother of his child. He hit her, and then he spit chewing tobacco on his 4-month-old baby. There's photographs of the baby. Like, you spit chewing tobacco, and I'm sure he meant to spit it on her and missed, but you spit chewing tobacco. It goes to the point of what? It's one thing if he said, hey, you know what? We really got into it. I accidentally spit, hit the kid. I feel terrible. And you admit to some fault. He is admitting to no fault. And there is evidence that there's at least some fault. And I don't know how you you are able to just completely deny all of that. There's so much smoke that it's hard to believe that there's not fire.
Well, so that gets into the whole conversation about the signing itself that the White Sox made, because we talked about this move from a baseball perspective, and we were very mixed on this, wouldn't you say, back when the signing happened? But when I went and looked back, and you hear what some of the people are saying, you could see that there were, even if we didn't particularly know about this kind of a thing, there were some red flags with this guy, with signing
Yes.
this guy.
Yes.
So I think what a lot of people are asking is, what exactly did the White Sox know? And is it were they just ignorant? Did they not do a good job of looking into this guy and kind of doing a quote background check, so to speak? Did they not listen to other people in the league that kind of had some stuff on him or whatever? Or did they know about this stuff and just didn't think it was relevant? That's what people are asking. We really don't know right now. And it's easy for a representative of the White Sox to say, we didn't know, because this person that works for the White Sox truly couldn't have known. But what if somebody higher up knew? Again, we don't know. We don't know who knew what. And that's what Sox fans want to know. And I've talked to Sox fan friends and family and, talked to them on Twitter and whatnot. And the fan base is just, they're really upset by this, and they have every right to be upset by it.
Yeah, I'm upset. I'm, like, I don't want to,
I don't want to assume something that's not true, like pointing fingers like, oh, Rick Hahn knew all about it, but he didn't care. We don't know that.
Right. But I don't want to, sweep this under the rug. This is a guy you brought in for a 1-year deal. And I don't know why you just don't be like, you know what? There's too much smoke here. Just tell the universe that you're not happy.
See, the thing is that this does get a little tricky while there's an investigation, because the players union is very, very powerful, and there are legal issues with saying too much during an investigation. And, people did bring it up that, the players union, if they decided to move on before the investigation, they could sue. That gets this stuff involved. This is why it makes it so complicated. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that the reason why it's so quiet during an investigation is because of all this legal and extra stuff.
Oh yeah. Like, it's, but if I'm the White Sox, I'm just parting ways. You know what?
They should.
Is if he's going to sue me, if the players union is going to sue, if their agents are going to try to say, oh, don't go to the White Sox, because you flat out say, listen, we're taking a zero tolerance policy. We saw enough evidence. I can't say that, beyond a reasonable, doubt as far as legal ramifications, but we saw enough of a claim and enough evidence that we don't want any part of this.
And if you have to eat the money, just eat the money.
Yep. If he sues you, and then he has to go to court and goes arbitration, however they have to do it, then you know what? Then you pony up the money, but you make him have to come to you for it. You just say, nope, done. He is not that important to you.
No, it should apply to any player, no matter how important or not, but especially with this guy in a 1-year, $12 million deal.
Yeah.
And people are wondering too, why did he sign so fast? Why did the White Sox sign him so fast? Was it just a coincidence that had nothing to do with this? Was he trying to sign quickly before, things might get out of control so he could at least be under contract with somebody? We don't know. But these are questions people are asking.
Yeah. Now it starts to go, huh. Was there something that he was trying to get out ahead of? Because if these allegations would have come out before he signed, nobody's signing him. But if he signs with a team, then he feels like, oh, well, then they got to pay me. A lot of questions I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to keep hammering on this until something's done about it, as they should. This is serious stuff.
So I'm just, if I'm the White Sox, I just move on.
You don't want him pitching for your team going forward.
You got rid of a guy that was bad vibes as your manager. You brought in somebody that you feel can bring back good feelings to this team and goodwill with your fans, and you're going to ruin that with Mike Clevenger.
Yeah. It's a real shame to hear that stuff. It really is.
The good thing is you got 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks before pitchers and catchers report. Use those wisely. Go talk to the victim. Look at all of the evidence. It doesn't matter what the police say or what, how the legal system goes. You make a decision and you say, hey, listen, you go to Rob Manfred and say, listen, we can't have this guy. The Dodgers did so with Trevor Bauer. Done, parted ways. And Mike, that's a much larger
huge financial commitment
and a much more elite player than Mike Clevenger. And you just say, listen, done. We're walking away. And you force everybody's hand to make a decision. The worst that happens is you pay this guy $12 million to go away.
Yeah. It's not a lot of money. They can't play cheap with that.
Yeah. What's he going to give you? 8-9 wins and a mid-4 ERA.
Shrug.
Meh. Other than that, I mean, there's not a lot going on in baseball. We had one Hall of Fame announcement, Scott Rowland.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are upset by it, but if you want to go by wins above replacement, which can be sketchy, he was like a 70-win player, but his defense really contributed to that. I always liked Scott Rowland, even if he was in the NL Central for a lot of his career. I always liked Scott Rowland. I mean, this year, the pickings were it was just full of a lot of Hall of Very Good.
My thing about it is, if you put in Scott Rowland, how is Dale Murphy not in?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at the point where it's like, if this guy is in, why isn't this guy in? It seems like it happens every year.
Is Scott Rowland's career slash line is 281, 318, 398. Dale Murphy's is 265, 346, 469. That's over 70 points higher on OPS. Slugging. And the career home runs 398 to 316. It's just Scott Rowland was a far superior defensive baseball player. I think it opens up a can of worms. And I think that's just the reality of when you don't let the steroid era players in, that you open the door for Hall of Very Good players.
If you took up the cans of worms that the Baseball Hall of Fame opened up, you would have enough to open a can of worms grocery store.
Just looking at the next several Hall of Fame classes or, ballots, there's not a ton of guys that, you're just like, oh, hey, these are These are, superstar guys, first ballot Hall of Fames. It's interesting to see how this is going to play out. I'm trying to find. There was
wasn't John Lackey going to be on the next ballot?
Let's see. I'm looking up. I saw an article. Da, da, da. Looking at MLB.com future Hall of Fame ballots. Next year, the top candidates are Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Chase Utley.
Beltre had a pretty good career.
Yeah, Joe Mauer and Chase Utley. Chase Utley had a hot minute where he was real darn good.
Yeah.
But
Joe Mauer, I think, deserves it for his position.
Other notable guys: Jose Bautista, Bartolo Colon, Adrian Gonzalez, Matt Holliday, Victor Martinez, Jose Reyes, and David Wright.
David Wright was on a Hall of Fame trajectory if it wasn't for all the injuries.
Oh, I know. Remember when he used to wear that helmet on top of his helmet and he looked like a mascot? Looked like he was just wearing a foam hat.
Yep, classic. He was so good. Like him and Troy Tulowitzki are like the first two guys that come to mind that had like Hall of Fame trajectories, and then injuries just derailed everything.
And then next year is the final year of on the ballot for Gary Sheffield.
I have to look. Didn't he hit at least 400?
Yes.
He should be in the Hall of Fame just for that swing alone. That bat toggle.
He should be in the Hall of Fame because his rookie year, he had his initials in gold embedded into his two front teeth.
That too.
I still remember I have the rookie card where he's smiling. You could see the GS in his teeth. You're like, all right, this is a guy right here.
Yeah.
The 2025 ballot, Suzuki. That's an easy Hall of Fame.
Yes, that's Hall of Fame. Yes.
And then CC Sabathia.
I'm
going to throw two numbers out there that make CC Sabathia probably a first ballot guy.
Okay.
250 wins, 3,000 strikeouts.
Yeah, I think he'll get in. I just, whether it's first ballot or not, I'm not sure. But like, I don't want to say and because he's not going to get in. I wonder if he's going to be first ballot or not. But I mean, 3,000 strikeouts, that is a golden standard.
Yes.
For the Hall of Fame.
That's why I say that number, you look at him, you're like, okay, he had a good career and he pitched in, for the highlight spotlight marquee team. You're like, that probably gets him in. But if he played for Oakland, does he make it in? I don't know. But that those 250 wins, and you want that 300 wins, the guaranteed plateau. But suddenly when you start looking at that plateau at the current era, man, that's a really impossible feat to hit unless you play forever, unless you're Bert Blyleven playing for 50 years.
Okay.
Other notable guys from 2025, Curtis Granderson, Felix Hernandez, Ian Kinsler, Justin Pedroia, Hanley Ramirez, Troy Tulowitzki, and Ben Zobrist. Yeah,
those are all very good players, but I don't think, again, we mentioned Tulowitzki about the injuries. You got a lot of really good players there. I just don't see any of them being Hall of Famers.
And your final year on the ballot, Billy Wagner.
Also, I want to make a quick correction. I said like 400 plus home runs for Gary Sheffield. He has 500.
Oh man,
500 is typically a golden standard for the Hall. He's got a 393 on base and a 907 OPS.
I think I wonder if there's the steroid stink keeps him off too.
Let me look at his fan graphs because I honestly don't remember what kind of a defender he was.
Oh, he dog shit.
I know it was bad, but how bad was it?
Yeah, go ahead and look. But you know, I can smell the dog shit, and he's retired for a long time.
Okay, he was a 62.1 F-WAR, so he does have like the total F-WAR. His career WRC plus was 141. Let's look at his fielding. They don't have a lot of metrics, but for the years they do have, oh boy. You want to know what his defensive runs saved in the recorded era is? Going from 02 to 2009, his DRS was negative 34.
He was bad. He was all offense.
If he spent more time in the AL and was a DH, probably would have been in already. Is that fair to say?
Probably. 26 ballot. Cole Hamels and Ryan Braun are the top two names. The other notable first-timers, Shin-Soo Choo, Edwin Encarnacion, Alex Gordon, Matt Kemp, Nick Markakis, and Hunter Pence. And the final year on the ballot is Manny Ramirez.
It's the steroid things. And you mentioned Ryan Braun. That's another steroid issue right there.
Yeah, I don't think he goes in. Cole Hamels.
I think Cole Hamels has a case. I think you could put Cole Hamels in the Hall of Fame.
I think so too.
If you're going to consider John Lester, you have to consider Cole Hamels.
I mean, I love Cole Hamels. I hope he gets in. But man, that's kind of a weak ballot year. And the thing is we don't even know if Cole Hamels goes in there yet because he's not officially retired, I don't think.
He's trying to play.
I mean, is it when you actually retire or when you play?
I think you have to officially retire.
Okay, then that might put a damper on that.
I think. Don't quote me on that. But you read what did you read the report recently that he's trying out for teams? He's looking to still play this year.
I've heard that. I don't know. I mean, did he pitch in the last two seasons?
He didn't pitch last year, I don't think.
I don't think he pitched in 2021 either. I think the last time he pitched was 2020.
The last time he pitched was with the Braves, and it didn't go particularly well. You remember when he came to the Cubs, 2018, he was fantastic. 2019, he started that year, first half was great, and then he got the injury, and that's when he tapered off.
Right. The 27 ballot, Buster Posey, John Lester are the top two names.
I think
Buster Posey is guaranteed. I'd
have to look at his numbers again. I honestly don't have them off the top of my head.
I mean, he was.
You know what? You're Buster Posey. Yeah, I'm thinking of Hunter Pence.
Oh no,
I'm sorry.
Buster Posey. I mean, he was the best catcher in the game and won 3 World Series?
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely.
Yeah. John Lester. I don't know if he's first ballot, but I think he gets in. And the other notable guys from that ballot will be Jay Bruce, Brett Gardner, Kyle Seager, Ryan Zimmerman, Jordan Zimmerman, and final year on the ballot, Andrew Jones.
Andrew Jones really had a great career. I think Andrew Jones is one of those guys who's like the definition of right on the line.
I would agree.
He's right on that line.
I mean, that guy was just an exceptional fielder.
And he was a good slugger too.
Yeah. And then the 28 ballot right now is looking like Albert Pujols and Yadi Molina. And Robinson Cano, David Price, and final year on the ballot, Todd Helton and Andy Pettit.
Todd Helton deserves more respect. He just doesn't get it because he'd spent his career with the Rockies.
I wonder if Andy Pettit gets in. I think Todd Helton will get in. I think he will get in before this year. If it makes it to his final ballot, I think that's real tough because they're not going to put him in the year that Pujols and Yachty go in. But
Okay, I'm looking at Andy Pettit's numbers, and if you just ask me based off his reputation, my mind automatically goes to Andy Pettit. Yeah, look at all those World Series and big time games he pitched in. Look at how successful he was. And if you're the old school looking at it, if you look at pitcher wins, which I personally hate, but if you look at the old school way, you see 256 wins, that would win some old school people over. But, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but he pitched in 3,316 innings total in his career. That's a 3.85 ERA, a 3.74 FIP, and a WHIP of 1.4. That's not bad by any means, but it's not spectacular. Right? I mean, that's
right.
That's good. That's not great. It's above average, but it's and you look at his strikeouts. The strikeout number is 2,448. It's not bad by any means. There are only a handful of pitchers that struck out more than 2,000 batters in their careers when you really think about it. But
yeah,
I don't know.
When you look at the body of work, just purely on paper, you say he probably doesn't get in. Borderline, but doesn't get in. But when you put like the reputation, and he was the face, he was the cog of a bunch of Yankees really good teams.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him that swagger that, I don't know if he gets in or not. I don't know. Part of me says, man, that playing for the Yankees really, 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 gives you a better shot than you probably deserve. But I don't know. I'm gonna, if you make me put a gun to my head and made me choose, I'd say he makes it in at some point, especially because of the weak classes.
No, you have to choose right now, Andy Pettit. Yes or no? I don't know.
Let's wrap this up. Talk some Blackhawks real quick. They got a nine day layoff here. And this was a team that they had the tank in a stranglehold. And then what did they win? Like 7 of 11 games?
Yeah, you know what? They've actually been playing some solid hockey up until last night against the Oilers. They beat the crap out of the Flames. They beat the Blues in St. Louis. They
got their ass kicked by Vancouver. That was an ugly game.
Dude, that was bad, yeah.
I mean, there was 3-game stretch where in an entire game, the number of shots on goals were 18, 19, and 14. And then that Flames game, they bounced back and had 29 shots on goal. But that Oilers game was bad. I have a friend who's an Oilers fan. He lives in Canada, so he can be an Oilers fan without getting shit. But he messaged me and he's like, were you able to finish that game? And I just messaged back, bombing for Bedard, and he just put like a crying, laughing face. And that's really what it's about, like Mike Babcock had a really good term about the Blackhawks when they lost and they ended up getting Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane. He called it losing the right way. And that's what I'm hoping the Blackhawks are doing right now. If you get Connor Bedard, and we keep talking about this guy, he's like, 16 years old, 17 years old. We keep talking about him, but every single thing metric you can put on him because you can only put him on a metric up until the age he's at. But he matches his every comp is Connor McDavid. And right now, Connor McDavid is just on another level.
He's ridiculous.
He is absolutely filthy. And, he's going to get to the point where you go, you know what? This guy is legitimately in the category of all-time great. Like Connor McDavid, take the longevity away from it, because Connor McDavid probably will never have the longevity, but Connor McDavid is better than Jaromir Jagr. And it's saying a lot, because Jaromir Jagr is like a Hall of Fame on every single level that there is. Connor McDavid is better. Like Connor McDavid is stupid good. So when we say, yeah, Connor Bedard, every comp is Connor McDavid. They've played every level that you can compare those to. You're like, oh, Connor Bedard is, he's the best player since Connor McDavid. And that's why it's so huge if the Blackhawks are able to get this number 1 pick, because it does change the trajectory of, can they win without getting Bedard? Yeah. But it makes it a whole lot easier when you have a anchor. This is our guy. This is the guy we build around, and you build your whole team around this guy. It makes it a whole lot easier to win.
So I'm going to say this too. You're absolutely right. We've been saying this for weeks. Let's say the Bears got the 2nd overall pick. Or the Blackhawks got the 2nd overall pick. That kid, Anam Fantilli, I don't know how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry if I botched that name. But he's projected to go 2nd. Sounds like he's pretty damn good too.
Oh yeah, there's 4 guys in this draft. They're supposed to be very good. It's just one guy is supposed to be absolutely elite. And oh my God, are you watching this football game right now?
Yes, I am. And that was incredibly stupid.
And that guy looks like he probably, did you see this? Oh, look at his leg.
Oh God. Oh, okay. Now I saw it.
Oh man. I bet he gets carted off. Oh man, stupid play that costs your team. Oh, he's up. Oh, thank God. Wow. Bad. Like, you just cost your team a chance to go to the Super Bowl with that play, and you get injured.
My goodness.
But yeah, there's basically 4 guys in this draft that are supposed to be just elite, and then it's a 4-person draft. Will you get somebody good afterwards? There's going to be players throughout, but those 4 guys, it's like a 4-guy draft. And
as long as you get a top 4.
Yeah, as long as you get a top 4, you're probably in good shape. But Connor Bedard is the absolute grail. He's the guy. Adam Fantilli, the guy from Michigan, very good. Leo Carlson, very good. And Mishkov, very good. After that, it starts going down. But Connor Bedard just is the guy. And right now, the Blackhawks, they had a hammer lock on on chokehold on that number one, best spot, but that winning streak really took them out of it, and they're inching their way back. They have the second worst record in the NHL behind Columbus.
Yeah, we got a few more months to go, so we'll see how this all ends up.
And the funny thing is if you look at Tankathon, it said like their odds and then their odds of getting the number one overall pick. And you're like, why is that different between for the number one team? And the reason is that only the top 11 teams can get the number one pick. So if the team with the 12th best record, they could go up to the second pick in the lottery and get the second overall pick. They can't get the first. So like the team that has the 12th worst record, they have a 2.5% chance of moving up, but they can't get the number one overall. So they could get the number two. And so all of those other odds then make it gets, the teams 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all of their odds go to the team with the worst record. Because anytime, one of those last couple teams get any chance that they would have to get number one pick would go to the team with the worst record. So the team with the second worst record has a 13.5% chance of getting the number one overall pick. But if you have the worst record, then it jumps to 25.5%. So it's like almost twice as high of odds. That's why it's so important. Between the second record, the worst record, and the third worst record, it's 2%, and then another 2% between third and fourth, and 1% between fourth and fifth. Those are just, marginally different. It's the between 1 and 2. That's where the huge difference is, and that's why it's important to lose these games. And as much as I like Max Domi and I would be all for it if they re-sign him in the offseason, because he really likes it here. He likes in Chicago. And if you're the GM of the Blackhawks, I say to him, hey, listen, we're going to trade you. You play a couple months from somebody else, and then we sign you in the offseason, and you're part of our rebuild. Let us get a pick out of you. And that's what I sell him on. Is get rid of Taves, get rid of Kane, get rid of Domi, get rid of everybody you can, and just stink it up and really lock away, because there's a lot of other teams that are going to want Columbus, Anaheim, Arizona, San Jose, Vancouver. They all want that number one pick. You've just got to go in there and just grab every bit of odds that you can.
Yep. If we could somehow rig it, let's do it. If only, right?
I hope it goes to the Blackhawks.
Oh my!
Just got to. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope. I think I've said my piece, and hey, we'll have our Super Bowl preview next week. It's all set. Eagles, Chiefs.
Andy Reid gonna go try to take it from his old team.
Yep, and Matt Nagy's in the Super Bowl, if anybody cares. I really don't, but
that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Alexander, blah, blah, blah. What is your Twitter? I just had a brain fart.
At ShyFanPat2.
ShyFanPat2. Oh my goodness. Brain fart there. Or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down. Come
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like... Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down